We are thrilled to be joined by Max Scherzer making his foul territory debut. And really, one of the reasons why a show like this exists, to be able to have conversations with Max, with some of his boys. Max, it's AJ, Scotty B, and Todd Frazier. How's spring training going, man?
Doing good. In the thick of it, you're starting to get to the point where you're over it, because once you get to 5 innings, you're like, all right, let's play some baseball. But you got to get those last two starts in. So these last 2 weeks are for the pitchers, not the hitters.
Well, okay, let's great. You're healthy. Everything's coming. 5 innings is awesome, but let's get right to it, Max. The pitch rules. You're in the middle of it. You've already been in the middle of it. You're in the middle of it off season. So I'm just going to let you talk about what you like, what you don't like. You're quick pitching guys, so I'm just going to let you run on this, and we'll chime in when you get a breath.
All right. Well, I think if we're going to talk about the pitch clock, we got to understand the history of this and kind of understand how the pace of games unfolded and where the conversations have been to really appreciate the context of really where the game needs to go. Go back 8 years ago when the pace of game was slowing beyond 2 hours, 45 minutes. And, we wanted to kind of institute some rules to try to pick up the pace. And one of those, type of rules was to say, let's start finding the hitters that are stepping out of the box or pitchers that are taking too long, that, to try to make the pace of game work quicker. It would be underneath a fine system. And, I think some parties involved thought that would get the desired result. And actually it kind of backfired, because we had numerous players saying that they didn't care what you find me. Like, the wins and losses are on the line. Like, I'm gonna take my time in those situations, when the games are at stake. Find me $1,000. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm here to win. And so that kind of shut down the kind of the stick element to how you're going to implement a rule to try to get pace out of this. I think then they tried it with the carrot and to say, hey, if you do work quick, you could get you can make an extra dollar or two. And again, that just didn't it didn't have enough material change in the way guys were playing baseball. So as a kind of the issue kind of kept, as the pace kept slowing down through the, now, take it through like 2017, 18, 19, 20, around those years, we started, I think there was one spring training where we even experimented with a clock. And I was vocal, and I said, look, I don't think there should be a clock in baseball. I said it, and I saw how it worked. Thought majority of the time I was, operating within the clock, and that, to have ball strike implications, with the clock, that didn't necessarily make sense. As this issue continued to grow, the game continued to slow down even more, and it started crossing over the 3-hour barrier. The average game length, starting to cross over the 3-hour mark. 3:05, and the games are slow. I get it. You listen to the fans are basically saying it's unwatchable. And that the fans really didn't like the pace of play, and that it was a problem. And it was a problem for a variety of reasons, both hitter and pitcher related. So you kind of get around to being on the competition committees, being a part of the union, being in these conversations. One of the things that I was stressing was that we needed some type of rule-based system to enforce this. What are we actually trying to accomplish here? We're trying to get hitters to stay in the box, pitchers on the mound. And one thing I kept harping on was the role of timeout. The way the hitters could use timeout, in an unlimited fashion. I mean, that's how things would slow down. I mean, if I try to work quick, the hitter could call timeout. If I shake off too much, the hitter could call timeout. That was a component to this pace problem. I also believe that another component to this was the foul ball situation. Over the past, call it 10 years, I think pitcher stuff has really gotten better. We have, guys throwing harder, more breaking stuff, and we're seeing more foul balls more than ever. And, that's another contributing factor in this, that there's more foul balls within the game. I think that kind of lays all the kind of groundwork to understand where this problem goes forward from here. You come out of the CBA, and the owners, have experimented in the minor leagues with the clock. But I saw the clock last year, and it's different when you don't have pitch com. If you don't have pitch com, as a pitcher, you talk to the minor leaguers that are underneath this, and they're consistently rushed, and just led for a different style of ball game when there was a pitch clock, and so the minor leaguers weren't necessarily given rave reviews about it. I thought maybe there's a way forward with the clock. If there's pitch com, let's see what this looks like. So I think that kind of gets us to this point in spring training, where now we have a pitch clock, now we have pitch com, and even myself, I can call the pitches. So that kind of now puts us in the like that. That kind of sets the stage for how we want to look at this next. One of the main objectives of having the pitch clock was to clean up the dead time within the game. And playing underneath this pitch clock and seeing this happen, and playing underneath the 15 seconds with no one on base, 20 seconds with a runner on base. So if I say 15-20 pace, that's what I'm talking about. That playing underneath 15-20 second pace, this is actually good. From the most part, 90% of the time, players are playing underneath this type of pace, and we've adjusted and it works. And I think the game's better for it, playing at an up-tempo pace. We've seen how much the game time has shrunk. We're looking at 2 hours, 35 minutes. I think that's I think I heard it's a 25-minute reduction in game time, and the fans have seen a positive reaction to it. And so I get it. I have a positive reaction to it as well. It's nice to be able to get on the mound, work quick. Hitters, can't slow the game down. And I think the rule change of only having one timeout has been a significant contributor to that, because the hitter now has to be in a box, has to be ready for the pitcher, and they can't really do a lot of things that they were accustomed to doing, and that's really picked up the pace, and players have adjusted.
So Max, to piggyback on that, when you were pitching and I was facing you, you're one of the best, right, at holding the ball when the guy got on first base, right? And then I'd be like, well, crap, he's held the ball for 10 seconds, timeout here, right? That the pitch clock, once you come set from the stretch, right, you can hold it or be as quick as you want. The timer starts when you engage the rubber, because when you were like, I remember hitting off you and there's a guy on first and you just stand there forever, right? And then it would mess with me and mess with so I can call timeout once. And then you can stand there for a minute, right? Because the timer starts once you come set.
Yeah. Underneath the current rules, yes. The timer would reset in that scenario. And let's say you get in the box and you're alert at 12 seconds. I have the ability to pitch whenever within that 12-second delta.
Okay. So you could rush me or you could wait the full 12 seconds.
Correct.
Now, could a base runner time you up and say, well, the 12 seconds, I know he has to go home?
Correct. And with the 2 pickoff rule, that's changed the component of the game as well. So I think that this kind of gets to, okay, what are the negatives? What's kind of player feedback? How are we looking at this? And we've seen in spring training, we saw a game actually ended because of the pitch clock. If that actually happened in the regular season game, where you got a big moment in a big moment in a regular season game, we're going to end the game because of pace. I can't subscribe to that, because that's outside the scope of what this was pitched as, that we're trying to clean up the dead time within the game, not change the game. And so when you start changing the results of game because of the punishment that you need to implement this, that's where you kind of lose me of saying that we need a clock. Sitting here today, middle of March, of trying to think through, okay, what should the rule really be? And, I'm kind of coming to the, thinking through this, and, this is kind of more for discussion, but I think there's something to it, is to say, look, the umpire should have discretion of when you can turn that clock on or off. That if the umpire thinks the game is moving too slow, then turn the clock on, and we have to play underneath the clock. We have to play underneath 15-20-second pace, and there's ball strike implications if you don't. But if all the players are playing underneath 15-20-second pace, do you really need a clock? Do you really need to ball strike somebody because of an innocuous event, some random thing that happens, that just takes a hitter's eye off the pitcher for one split second, and then he's up at 7 seconds and he gets a ball, and we change the outcome of an at bat. That's where it starts losing me, and so that's where I feel like if the umpire had a discretion of when the pitch clock could be on or off, then we can just play baseball. And like we said, at least 90% of the time, we're playing at 15-second pace right now. So it'd be a way to kind of blend both the rule-based system and have the clock be there in the background to ensure that the games are moving at a quick pace, but without really disrupting the game unless there's really clear evidence of like a true infraction.
Hey, Max. My question, I'm going to be devil's advocate here about the whole situation. I'm old school guy, one of those things. I do believe we should quicken it up, and I do think it's been great. But it's sometimes too as well. Like for me, watching the game, I saw earlier today, a guy was pitching now. He's going to his belt trying to give the pitch, that pitch com, which you do as well, right? So for me, isn't as a pitcher, because usually we talk about pitchers, just give me the pitch and go. We don't want to, you guys don't want to think about that much while you're pitching. But for me, wouldn't that be like not good as a pitcher? Just understand, all right, I got to think about exactly what pitch, then I got to press the button, then I got to give it back to him. Can you explain that to me and to fans out there how that is either a good thing or a bad thing? What's your perspective on that?
Oh, it's actually a great thing. There's times where I absolutely know what pitch I want to throw, given the situation in the game, and I can just call it in. But I've also experimented with this enough that there's some cadence of working with your catcher and letting your catcher call the pitches. So it's a dynamic that I'm currently, kind of working through and understanding, when should I be calling pitches? When do I let the catcher call pitches and just let that happen? Because of the clock, I think it's, given how many different kind of pitches and executions that you want to be able to do at this level, the pitcher has to be able to make quick, be able to communicate with the catcher quickly and be able to get our signals right, that the pitch com is necessary if we're going to have a pitch clock.
Max Frazier doesn't get it because he's never been a pitcher-catcher relationship, right? So he doesn't understand like that how it works but it's the pitcher's ball, right? You have the ball in your hand. It is your ball. You can throw whatever you want. I'm putting down suggestions. So as a catcher, listen, you call your own game. You know why? Because then the manager can't yell at me when I come in and he goes, why'd you call the slider 0-2? Well, I didn't mean for him to hang it, right? So good on you pitchers. Take the pitch comp, type it in, tell me what's coming, I'll knock it down, but then it's on you. So go for it, Max.
But Max, listen, I'm interrupting. What happens if you're a younger guy and you're still trying to understand the pitchers? You know what I mean? So there's a concept to that too. So you got to find, is that more homework you got to do? Is that talking to a guy like you? Like what's the difference there?
I just think it's a learning curve for everybody. Maybe there are guys that don't want to use the pitch com. I'm sure there's guys that do want to use the pitch com. Maybe there's veterans that are willing to use it more. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. But I also think we need to write some rules around the scope of this and make sure that we contain this where it is now, that it should only be players on the field that can have one of those communicators. We need to write in the rules right now and nip this in the bud that somebody on the bench couldn't be doing this, because I don't want to see a slip. I see a slippery slope here that all of a sudden the front offices and pitching coaches are going to start, calling in the pitches, and that's the last thing that I want to see happen.
But right now you can't do that, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
But once let's say this becomes popular, like okay, pitchers can start calling their own pitches, then what's next? And so let's write the rule in now saying no, under no pretenses do we ever foresee this happening where the pitches or front office or anybody can call a pitch for a pitcher.
Well, colleges do that now, right? With the walkie-talkies.
I think so.
Yeah, they have the earpiece. The catcher has the little earpiece in, and you see the coach like, okay, fastball in, and the catcher's like, okay, and then they have the little wristband thing too. They call, right, and it says whatever the pitch is. So you don't want to see that. And I like that because it still puts a human element. It's not an analytic driven. So I'm all for that too.
Right.
Hey, Max, back to the pitch clock for a moment. What are some of the intricacies that need to be changed? And is there ongoing discussion about anything changing during spring training here? Because we're a couple weeks away from the season, and like almost every day we see some new wrinkle that comes out, whether someone knows they're doing something wrong or not, or some are trying to game the system. Like, what have you observed?
Yeah, I mean, they're making little changes, kind of every day on this, but I mean, that we kind of anticipated that. We knew that was going to happen. We knew there was going to be a big learning curve from this, that, taking what happens in the minor leagues and assuming it's going to work fluently in the big leagues, you knew there was going to be some hiccups and ways to, manipulate the clock to your advantage, both hitter pitcher. So I think everybody's working through that, trying to figure out exactly where all the lines are at. And then more importantly, also understanding where the umpires are on this, and understanding where it's kind of hard and fast and where there's umpire discretion. And then thinking about all the, foul ball situations where the left fielder's out of position. If he's running back to his position and I wait for him, like, should I really be getting a ball if I'm waiting on my left fielder? Or does the umpire have the discretion to sit there and say, all right, that's not what we're actually trying to, you're pitching at a correct pace. It's just a random thing that happens within the game that's slowing the game down, not the actual pitcher.
Max, so I understand like what you're saying about the pitch clock and the tweaks, but let's say you're CG right now, you're 8 2/3, you're 100 pitches in, you're tired, you're hot, it's middle of July, and you have to go cover first, right? And then you need the little breather that we used to be able to give you by having the first baseman walk over, the catcher walk out. Like, is that we're still going to be room for that for the umpires? Will they help guys out, or is it going to be like 20 seconds, get back on the mound, and the guys out there, like, are you going to be like, fuck this, I need a break, I'll take a ball?
Well, I mean, you have 30 seconds in between at bats, so I mean, I think that would be enough time anyway. Like I said, there's going to be plenty of situations that we have to see unfold and make decisions after that. We don't have everything figured out yet, and both player and umpire and MLB. So, the component of this, of picking up the pace of the game, is definitely fascinating, and it's definitely been a step in the right direction, and we definitely need that, because where status quo was in 2022, I'd rather have the clock than where status quo was in 2022. Given that, I just don't want to see these negative outcomes happen over just random events when guys are just playing baseball at a normal pace.
Max, I saw the other day my boy Pete Alonso over there. He was leading off an inning. Next thing you know, the guy made out. He comes sprinting out of there at first base to get in the dugout, get his stuff on, get in the batter's box. Next thing you know, he does this thing with his breathing. Like, that's not the whole purpose of this whole thing. It's to speed up the game, but as well, like, as a hitter coming off the field, that's got to play with your mind a little bit too, man. If I'm in the outfield, I make a diving play. Next thing you know, you got less than 2 minutes to get there, get going. And if you're not ready, they're going to bang you for strike one. You're not ready to get back. You know what I mean? So it's like,
right,
there has to be that, that gap right there with like an umpire's discretion or something that has to be talked about. No?
Yeah. And that's what we are talking about. And that's kind of, a situation that, that we're all thinking about and alluding to, is that, what happens in that scenario. Let's even take it a little bit step farther. Let's say a defender, dives and kind of hurts himself a little bit. He needs a second. Like, okay, that seems like an obvious umpire discretion, but like, where does that go? Like, where is that line? Like, where are we actually going to define it? Because we know when we say umpire discretion, there's a wide variety of umpires that can view that in a different way. That there'll be some guys that are completely sticklers, and then there'll be other umpires that are very lenient. And so that's one of the concerns that I have seen going forward in the regular season, when these things, if this happens late in the game, I mean, in spring training, it's one thing to have it happen and maybe hit Twitter and we laugh at it, but it's gonna be another thing when a game is decided by this. And I know I get the objective that we're trying to do. We're shortening the time of games, getting it back to 240. That'd be great. I want that as much as possible, but are we really going to get the, what's the difference between 240 and 245? I mean, how much more do we have to step through the game and change the game to get to squeeze maybe those extra 5 minutes out of there?
And by the way, Max, who's we? Like, when you're talking about this, of course, this discussion's going on within the team and players, but are there active discussions going on with a rules committee? Like, are we going to actually see certain changes and kind of additions to what's in place right now about how things will work? Because gray area is usually not a good thing. Like you mentioned, you go to class, some teachers are strict, some are a little loose on what time you can get there. So it sounds like if we're leaving it to the umpires, like you said, it could be an issue. So, like, what's the inside word on where this is getting figured out?
Yeah, I don't know exactly, because I got 4 kids now. I don't have time to be a part of the be on the phone calls with the union or the competition committee. So I've retired from my union. I've taken my union hat off. But I mean, these are just conversations we're having. Things we're thinking about, things we're talking about, different scenarios that are unfolding, and how to handle them. And when we're handling it, it's really asking the umpires. And every single day we're getting different things thrown at us. So we're trying to figure this out. We're trying to work. It's just that I feel like everybody's figured out how to play underneath this type of pace, and we like this type of pace. It's where is the punishment going to be when a second here, second there, is that really necessary?
Max, who's on the competition committee? It's owners and players, correct?
I think that, if we're talking about the CBA that competition committee, yeah, there's, I think, 6 owners, 1 umpire, and 4 players.
Okay, and then the owners, what I don't think a lot of people understand is owners can put rules in without the players okaying them, correct?
Correct.
Like they can say, "Hey, we're playing every game at 2 in the morning," and the players are like, "We don't have a choice," right? So I know that there's been some fight, like you keep talking about the players on these rules, but the bigger bases, the times, all these new things they're putting in, the shift stuff. Like, what's the biggest one that players are talking about? The pitch clock, or is it the shifts? I mean, if I was left-handed hitter, I'm like, no shift, great. So which one are the players like really digging in on? It's got to be the clock.
Oh, it's the clock because it affects every single play. When you're on the mound, I mean, one of the notions is that we've heard is, coming from MLB, is that, look, guys figure it out, and there's only a handful, maybe a 1 violation per game. Life has moved on, and is really the clock a factor? And my retort is absolutely. Like, you have to look at that clock every single second. I took a violation a couple games ago on an 0-0 count, where a hitter was getting up to the plate. For every at bat, like I had never been slow on the first pitch of a bat. Like, it always been 20 seconds. So I kind of tuned it out. And so I tuned out one of those at bats, and the clock ran out of me. I had no idea. And so I've had to make the adjustment. No, like literally every pitch, you need to check that clock to see exactly where you're at. So the clock is literally affecting the game. And even so much is affecting, we've changed now the component of first base. If a runner's on first base, a stolen base game, 2 pickoffs, and the third one's a balk. Like, that's completely changing the game. That's outside the scope of, cleaning up dead time within the game. So that's kind of my, pause for hesitation. Understand the good and the pros out of the pitch count, but there's some cons here, and we need to think through it and think about what the right rules ought to be to make sure baseball is just played like baseball.
No more Max's quick feet and then the little lob throw over to first anymore. Like, the balloon ball over there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very specific thing. Yeah. So, I always did that because if I call it, if you go with an A move, sometimes I've had it been where my feet can get caught in the hole, and I can throw the ball away. And so I found was that if I at least keep my feet quick, that even if I do catch that hole and I'm in a lob throw, at least I won't throw the ball away. Like, the runner can't advance. So I can at least show. I call it the B move, the rainbow throw, where I at least have quick feet and then show a rainbow throw. Like, okay, at least there's where it's at. And then once I kind of have that feel of understanding, the mound and where the pickoff is, then come back with an A move. I'm having to make an adjustment. I can't have a rainbow throw anymore. I'm working on. Now I have an A move, but having an A+ move and making an adjustment to that, because I need the I need the runner to assume that I have, like, they could see my best move at any time. So yeah, that's one of the adjustments I'm having to make.
Doesn't this change lead to more stolen bases, though? And that could be looked at as a good thing for the game because we don't really have that anymore?
This will be an interesting dynamic of how this plays out between the pitcher, runner, catcher, and the time. I think just on the surface, it seems like that would help the runner. I think there'll be a learning curve. I think in the beginning, the runners are going to figure this out faster because of the pickoff reduction. However, I think once pitchers kind of figure out, hey, and this comes back from Rajay Davis. Rajay Davis, you want to stop a running game, just hold the ball. So like when AJ's talking about, hey, Max held the ball, well, you can blame AJ, or you can blame Rajay Davis for that, because he said, you want to shut down a running game, just hold the ball. And so I could hold I got really comfortable holding the ball for 8-10 seconds. It didn't bug me whatsoever, and I didn't have to pick off anymore, and I could control the running game, mess with the hitter, all in the same breath, and as long as I could slow the game down by holding the ball. So I feel like now you have a bigger delta to play with. There's at least 8 seconds to play with now, whereas probably before there's maybe only 4 or 5 before the hitter would call a timeout. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes through in the season. If you're able to, pitch at 8 seconds, pitch at 1 second, pitch at 8 seconds, pitch at 4 seconds, and really change up your holds, how that will affect the running game.
So Max, we already saw you in spring this time. I guess you got called for a balk or a violation for quick pitching the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to show the video here real quick of you. Can you explain what happened? Like, you've quick pitched, you've held, the guy calls timeout, right? And you're like, okay, screw this. I'm coming set while he's not looking. And then you throw it before he looks up. This is awesome to me. And then the umpire's like, wait, that's a ball. Like, wait a minute. Yeah. You did everything right. So explain to me what you're arguing with the umpire and what he's saying back to you.
Yeah, so that was previous game. Like, you can come set before the hitter was alert. I think they got rid of that. But in that moment, I was pressing to see, all right, what's when can you actually go? Now I went a split second too early. I get it, but I was trying to see, like, it's wild to come set before the hitter's alert, and knowing that he just took Victor just took a timeout, that he no longer has a timeout. So. At this point now I can quick pitch and he can't stop me. And so, he's in there. The umpire tells me go. And so I'm trying to kind of sync up when he's going to look up and when I can fire the ball, and try to get the feel of the rhythm of the timing. And so I felt like I had got Victor's eyes. His head was moving up. But I mean, watching the replay, I went too early, and I get it. I was learning it. If you actually go back and later in that game, I understood. Okay, I took a balk. I'm learning this, and then I understood what I needed, where the rhythm is. Like, I got to see the hitter's eyes, and then once I got the hitter's eyes, then I got it, and then it wasn't gonna. Then I haven't done it again. So
I always tried not to look in your eyes, because I didn't know which one to look at. So I was always like, well, if I feel good, I'll look in the brown one. But if I get a little scared, I'm gonna look in the blue one. So, but to me, like, I can't wait to see, like, you, Greinke, probably Verlander, like the veteran guys are gonna mess with hitters' timing. Frazier's a big leg kick guy. Like, you could just sit there and hold the ball, and then boom, and then the next pitch rush him. Like, I can't wait to see you veteran guys just mess with hitters and basically fuck with hitters until they can't hit anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I fully believe that's I feel like we're more like a quarterback now, where you're able to, a quarterback really uses the play clock to their advantage, and then they run different plays off the play clock. Well, that's kind of what we're doing now as a pitcher now. We have a pitch clock. I'll be able to run certain pitches and think of different things. So that's going to be a challenge, and see how this unfolds.
This was awesome. Really appreciate it. Great to have you on. Hope we can do this throughout the season to get into the good stuff that needs to be talked about.
Yep. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Max.
Thanks, brother.
All right.
Good stuff, man. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you.